Minister through the apportioning of the 2025 budget in this regard. And I can confirm.
So just to take one step back. So the minister, when he gave his evidence, he explained that there was pretty much like a 6-month orientation session that was taking place within the SAPS starting from July when he took over as the executive authority.
Yes.
And what you are explaining is that during that orientation session, at various points you were asked to make presentations to the to the minister, and you have attached in your witness statement the various presentations that you made to the minister in relation to various financial and budgetary issues relevant to the SAPS.
Correct.
So just over a paragraph 19, can you read that and then just explain what your evidence is from there?
Yes, I can confirm that all these 5 presentations that I've mentioned in paragraph 18 dealt with the budget framework, overall challenges as well as pressure points in the organization. None of these presentations dealt with the matters that are relating to PKTT. To our strategic presentations, there was nothing that we spoke about in these 5 presentations that related to the PKTT.
So in these, so you're making these presentations, but they're at a very high level in relation to the overall SAPS budget and so on.
That is correct.
And even though your presentations may not have dealt with the PKTT, did the minister ever ask you in relation to budgetary issues and so on around, what is the budget implications of the PKTT, or express any concerns in relation to that?
I have never spoken to the minister about the PKTT budget. All discussions concerning the allocation of funds to the PKTT are solely between myself and the National Commissioner as the accounting officer. The typical process, as I had indicated, is that the project leader would then apply for an extension of funding as well and submit this request. The submission will then go through various levels of approval, eventually ending up with the National Commissioner. I usually have these conversations with the National Commissioner during this process. We regularly discuss matters with all teams, including matters that pertains to intervention task teams as well as the PKTT. These are routine conversations between myself and the National Commissioner. My role then is to confirm whether there is funding. If there is no funding, we then have a conversation with the National Commissioner in terms of determining priorities or reprioritizing to ensure that we support this. These are the conversations that I have only with the National Commissioner.
So these are conversations, as you say, that you have with the National Commissioner as the accounting officer in relation to how you allocate the budget, and that there were never conversations that were either that you had with the minister or that were ever raised with the minister in relation to how you're allocating the budget, how these task teams are essentially impacting the overall SAPS budget framework.
The presentation for 2025 in terms of the apportioning of the allocation, it spoke to the apportioning of the allocation to all cost centers, but it did not touch on anything that relates to the PKTT.
Okay. So, can you confirm, how did you learn about the disbandment?
I had gone on leave from the 17th of December last year. That leave ended on the 10th of January 2025. So on the 2nd of January, while I was on leave, I learned of the disbandment. I think I saw something on one of the news outlets. That's how I learned about it. I was on leave.
And General Dimpabe.
Advocate Zikalala, may we please take Honorable Ngola.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just a follow-up, Chair, on the Minister being briefed about the budget arrangements of the PKTT. And it's very important, Chair, because the Minister bases strongly, amongst other reasons, that budgeting of financial costs of the PKTT were becoming too much. So has the minister or the national commissioner solicited any cost analysis of the PKTT from you?
No, Chair.
Have you ever been made to account on the cost effectiveness of the PKTT in the SAPS top management meeting?
No, Chair.
Thank you very much.
May proceed. Honorable Matthews.
Also, just a follow-up or a question of clarity. There are 11, or there's 11 task teams. So did the minister also inquire about any of the other 10 at all, like specifically on how much was spent?
From me as a CFO, I have never.
In those 5 presentations to him, there was no questions from him or his team?
These were strategic presentations, Chair. I have never been requested to come and present of the operations to the minister.
Or any of them? Okay, thank you.
No.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. You may proceed.
Thank you. So, as the committee members have already foreshadowed, it was a significant part of the minister's evidence before this committee that it was, he had in mind these budgetary pressures when he wrote the disbandment directive and he essentially issued it. And when he was before this committee, one of the things that he relied on heavily was a comment you had made in an information note. Now, I don't know if the committee members have that information note. It's in the annexures, but the comment is also set out on page 20, paragraph 23. The information note for those who want to look at the annexures is PPD 13 at page 105. And so, just to take one step back, this was an information note for the 2024, for the period 1 April 2024 to 31 March 2025. Is that correct?
Correct.
The information note was as I see it, and I can pull it up quickly, was completed or was an application for funding that was done by General Kumalo. And that application for funding was then made, I think, in March. Let me check. Was made on the 26th of March 2024. Is that correct? Do you have it before you?
That is correct.
So the comment that you made on that information note was essentially approved before the minister came into office.
That is correct.
And then can you then take us through essentially what you were trying to explain in that comment? You've set it out in paragraph 23 of your statement, if you want to have a look at that.
Thank you, Chair. Perhaps before I even get to my comment, I wish to state that I did not give anyone permission to utilize that information note. That information note was an information note requesting funding from the project leader to the National Commissioner, and it came to my table to then confirm if funding is available. I was shocked to hear about that information note being utilized in evidence in this regard. And nobody has ever asked me about the context of that particular comment that I had made on this information note. Nobody. And it is a conversation that I had with the National Commissioner when that request for funding came to our table. The project leader requested 94 million. You will recall that this information note comes in March. Somewhere towards the end of March, you are trying to close a financial year 23-24, and you are getting to the new financial year.
Can I just pause because I think that is an important detail. The financial year for the end of the financial year is the end of March.
It's the end of March, yes.
So the information note comes on the 26th of
March.
Yes. So it's coming just before you are about to close your books, or I don't know what you close.
Correct.
Yes.
It's coming just towards the closure of a financial year, and the
Before that, Chair.
May I
Yes,
proceed?
there's a question.
No, there was a point she was trying to articulate which she feels very strong about it. And she was interrupted that no one even asked her about it, and she was shocked to see. So I thought we must allow her to finish that ventilation. And then we can take forward the new question that she's talking about. Because this might be a platform where she feels she needs to express herself, and she has been sitting with this matter. And she must be given that opportunity.
That is granted. Honorable, General Timbani, can you conclude the point that you wanted to elaborate?
I wanted to indicate that this is one of the many information notes or funding requests that will come to our table. This was a request that was made by the project leader, and it was submitted in March. This is a conversation that I have with the National Commissioner, and I make several observations and comments in this regard. And I get to be shocked when this information note is utilized as evidence and trying to portray a picture as if I was advocating for the disbandment of the political task team. It is taken out of context, and I believe that this is an important platform to then deal with the context in terms of this information note. I wish to state that I did not give anyone permission to use that or give anyone the physical document in this regard to use in their evidence. Now, this information note comes, it has been taken out of context. Then I make an observation to say we are closing a financial year. We are getting into the new financial year. Between April and May, we will be engaging in a process where we then allocate or a process of distributing resources to all cost centers in this regard. For the purposes of allowing this task team to then do their work, we agree with the National Commissioner that the initial allocation will then be 20 million. You will note that the project leader had requested for. We agree with the National Commissioner that up until we finalize the internal apportioning of the budget, we will then confirm 20 million to allow for the team to work while we finalize the processes of internal apportioning. And those processes unfolded and they were concluded in May. And I can indicate to this committee that the allocation for the team for that financial year was not 20 million, it was 55. The 20 million was an initial allocation as agreed with the National Commissioner, and subsequently we then concluded the internal apportioning and decisions were taken, and additional funding was given to the team, and the total allocation for that year was 55 million. Now I raised these concerns to say the National Commissioner, this team has been in existence for a long time, and I think I have raised this earlier. It is impossible, it's practically impossible for me from a budget point of view to operate in this fashion. It will be best, and you will note that the last comment there I'm saying, task component OD, this is organizational development, to urgently conduct a work study investigation for them of a permanent structure. And I'm talking to the permanent structure that relates to PKTT in KwaZulu-Natal. I had indicated that it was my view that this team was established to deal with the problems in KwaZulu-Natal. It's been 5 years. Clearly, this team is then dealing with a serious problem that does not want to go away. For us to be able to resource this team properly, let's have a permanent structure in KwaZulu-Natal. Of course, the National Commissioner has different views to say, not localized in KwaZulu-Natal. Perhaps when we deal with this and we come to that decision, it might be a team that is national to be able to deal with the similar problems in other provinces. Of course, he knew from an operational point of view, I'm assuming, that the scope of this team had expanded into other provinces. He had no obligation to share that with me. And ultimately, he then approved the initial allocation of 20 million. When we are done with the internal apportioning, then the total allocation to support this team for that year was 55 million. So the document has been out there. been discussed out of context, and nobody has ever reached out to me to say, what exactly did you mean by these comments? So I thought I would use this opportunity to then clear the air and clarify this. The allocation for that year was then 55 million with a total spending of 57.5 million at the end of that financial year. Thanks, Chair.
Honorable Sangun.
Thank you very much, Chair. General, on that issue that you've well articulated the context, but I can tell that you are quite upset with your comment having been used as evidence. How does it work in SAPS? Because I see that information note had 3 signatures, if I'm not mistaken. I think, General, okay. But you were the second last before the National Commissioner. Now, once you make your comment and it goes to the National Commissioner, ordinarily does it go back down the line so everybody can see the comments? I'm trying to figure out, does it also go to the minister? How does it get to the minister's office for the minister and use it as evidence?
These submissions don't go to the minister. It ends with the National Commissioner as the approving authority. Then it will go back to the project leader who would have applied for funding. I would of course have a copy to ensure that then I keep track in terms of the budget allocation as well as expenditures in this regard. They do not go to the minister.
Sorry, Chair, it's just, so in your view, how, and I know that maybe I'm putting you on the spot here, but when the minister brings this document, I mean, it's an operational discussion between, yourselves as the officials who are signing it off. If you had to hazard, how do you think the minister even knows what you said? Because you said you never discussed this with him. He shouldn't, maybe asked that he shouldn't even know that you had written this comment, am I correct?
I am not saying he shouldn't know. I am not certain where he got hold of the document. I'm simply saying that it should not then be utilized as if, and creating an impression as if, as the CFO, I took the document and I went to the minister with the document. That is not what transpired. And I'm not saying he is not entitled to have a look at documents in the organization, but I certainly did not give him that document. When the document leaves my office, it goes to the National Commissioner. The National Commissioner will then approve it, goes back to the person who had requested funding. I would request a copy for purposes of my records as well as accounting properly. Probably the executive authority has access to documents and discussions in the organization, but I certainly did not give the minister that document, or General CBF for that matter.
So you've already discussed part of the comment that you made, which is under paragraph 23 of your witness statement. And this is just further clarification because a lot of emphasis in the evidence of both General Sabia and then subsequently the minister, and in particular the minister, was to say, and looking at the line just under paragraph 23 in the quote 1, 2, 3, 4, the 4th line, where you say post-elections the team must be deactivated as it has been in existence for the last 5 years. So there seems to have been the suggestion, and it was made in evidence, that the CFO had advocated for the disbandment of the team. But as I understand from what you're saying about the last line, was that you were in fact saying that steps need to be taken for the team to be made a permanent structure. Is that correct, or do you just want to clarify anything further?
That is the correct context, because if it is a permanent structure, it has been there for a long time, then it gives you an opportunity to be able to budget for it properly, to resource it properly, because clearly it is dealing with something that is a bit permanent in this regard. And as I indicated earlier, then issues of accountability in terms of the resources that you would have allocated to that particular team. So it is correct.
So, I mean, we've covered a significant amount in relation to that particular comment that you had made, but ultimately, as I understand, your evidence is to be saying that from a budgeting perspective, you had made that particular comment in that framework from a budgeting perspective, looking at the fact that this was a team that was ongoing for 5 years.
Yes.
But it was not, and you must just clarify for me if I'm putting words in your mouth, that it wasn't you advocating for the disbandment of the team in the way that it was eventually disbanded.
Correct. I wouldn't have advocated because I did not even know the operational work that they are doing. These are the operational conversations that I held with the operational teams together with the National Commissioner. So I do not normally get into meetings where the project leader will be briefing each other together with the National Commissioner. So it was from a resource point of view, as well as to assist us to be able to predict and to allocate resources and to ensure that there are systems in place to hold the relevant project leaders and project managers or whoever would then be heading this permanent team in terms of the resources that will be allocated to them.
If you can just give me a minute, I just wanted to confer with this. Thank you. Thank you. I think in relation, and the AC had just wanted me to confirm with you that really the context within which this must be understood, certainly by the committee, is really from the budgeting point of view, and that it wasn't a operational decision.
Not at all. That is correct.
So then that then largely leaves us with the third theme that you explore in your evidence in relation to the health risk services contract. Can you, now the committee's already had quite an extensive explanation from General Fani about supply chain management and eventually how that contract was awarded within his component. But can you then explain to the committee how you begin to intersect with this health risk contract that was awarded to Mr. Matlala's company?
Okay, perhaps before I start, just to confirm with the committee that I did not form part of any structure, be it the BSC or bid specification committee, bid evaluation committee or bid adjudication committee. I was not part of such structures when this contract was awarded. This was awarded by the BAC that is chaired by Lieutenant General Fani, and an SLA was signed by Lieutenant General Kua, who is the end user and who had requested these services to be procured on their behalf by supply chain management. I'm on leave in December. I have never formed part of any meeting that was called by the minister when the articles came out. I was not in office, I was on leave. When I came back from leave in January 2025, I get to be briefed by the internal auditors that were obviously appointed by the National Commissioner, having been tasked by the minister in terms of the issues that were raised in here surrounding this contract.
Can I just clarify things? The internal auditors come and brief you, or the internal auditors in your line department?
The internal auditors reports directly to the accounting officer. However, it is an environment that I work with closely with the indication to say they understood the implication of this particular investigation. What implication will it have on the financial statements. You will note that this would have been the last quarter of a financial year, and we were preparing to close the financial year and subsequently to put together a set of financial statements. So I work very closely and coordinate the audit issues in the organization. That will be the internal audits as well as the external audits, as well as the activities of the audit committee. So internal auditors together with the chief risk officers are the offices that I oversee and monitor and support on a continuous basis. They are given this task. I came back from leave. They then come and brief me to say, CFO, this is a task that has been given to us in your absence. We are proceeding with the audit of this particular issue. We are flagging it in the process of you preparing to close the financial year and ultimately to put a set of financial statements. Take note. So I support immediately the work that was done or the work that was given to this team by the National Commissioner.
So what is the significance for those of us that don't, and certainly for myself, are not familiar with the budgeting cycle? When you say it was in the fourth quarter and they were raising this investigation they were undertaking, what was the significance of that?
The significance was that by end of March, we will be closing the financial year. And after the closure of the financial year, then you are expected as the CFO to then put together a set of financial statements that you will hand over to the external auditors to audit and determine whether your financial statements are credible and they indicate all the affairs of the department. So there is a note that we need to disclose. If there is any irregular expenditure, if there is any unauthorized expenditure or any fruitless and wasteful expenditure that has been incurred by the department for that year under review. So this essentially would then affect, if it is deemed to be irregular, it will then have to be reported and disclosed properly. So the auditors do brief me and we support the work that they do. And in the first week of March, a formal preliminary report is given to myself as well as General Fanny to say the preliminary indication is that this contract is irregular. There is a possible irregular expenditure that you need to note. Now we do have.
Can I ask? You say that this is in March.
This is in the first week of March.
You are given a report saying there is concern in relation to this contract. And there's a possibility of declaring irregular expenditure in relation to this health risk services contract.
Yes.
You say that they briefed you and General Fani. Did they brief General Fani with you because he is head of the supply chain, or how does he become part of the conversation?
I indicated, Chair, that they then give me this report with a covering letter addressed to myself as well as General Fani. And the reason for that is that General Fanny is the custodian of the irregular expenditure register. So immediately, an assurance provider, be it the internal auditors or external auditors, flags a transaction as a possibly irregular expenditure, you are obliged to then report it and record it on the irregular expenditure as such. And in terms of the National Treasury Framework on irregular expenditure, you must then immediately ensure that you appoint somebody to then conduct a determination test to determine and come to a conclusion and confirm that either this indeed that has been flagged by the auditors is not correct or it is correct. So they had that indication. It was a formal letter that accompanied that report that was submitted to myself as well as General Fanny in this regard. So what I then did the following day, having been finished with this report that talks about the possible irregular expenditure, of course, we then requested supply chain management to uplift this transaction on the irregular expenditure register as a possible irregular expenditure. I then approached the National Commissioner to say, this is a contract that was awarded by the BAC that is chaired by General Fund. The framework requires us to then determine and confirm that indeed this is irregular. I do not see that General Fanny will then deal with that particular process. So I need to let us appoint somebody immediately to ensure that we are within the timelines as required by the framework to do this determination test. I wrote to the National Commissioner. The National Commissioner agreed, and we appointed a very competent person from Gauteng Finance, and we then instructed that investigating officer to ensure that within 30 days or on or before 30 days, that determination must be concluded. Where I am sitting, in the next 30 days, it will then be April. And I would need to then to start to put together these financial statements and to have a decision on this particular contract. So the IO goes on and investigates.
Just to clarify, when you say IO, is that investigating officer?
It's the one who is then doing or conducting a determination test for us. They go on, they complete the report, and somewhere in May, they bring back the report, and it is confirmed that this contract is irregular. What does that mean? It means it was awarded in contravention with various supply chain prescripts. It was awarded by the BAC. So it is confirmed. I then instruct supply chain management to say this transaction has to then move from possible irregular expenditure from the register to confirmed irregular expenditure. What then this means? It means the register that will come to me or to be submitted to me to put together note 24 on the financial statements. It is a register that will then have these transactions or this transaction confirmed as irregular, and we have to disclose such. So we then instructed supply chain management to upgrade it from possible irregular expenditure to confirmed irregular expenditure. And the amount.
Can I ask you a question at that point? Because when General Fani was with us last week, he said that he was not sure whether there had been a determination test that was done and whether that determination test had determined that there was irregular expenditure. Are you confirming that that determination test was done? Are you aware if that was shared with General Fani?
I shared it with General Fani. And I instructed supply chain to update the irregular expenditure register so that when they submit it to me to then conclude note 24 of the financial statements, that transaction is there as confirmed irregular expenditure.
So then the financial statements were, when the financial statements were concluded, and I think this is at paragraph 31.4 of your statement. In note 24, or maybe you explain it because I think you're much more fair.
Okay. So in the set of financial statements, you have different notes that you will then have to disclose these types of expenditure. For the purposes of these discussions, I will then refer to note 24. If the committee has gone through our financials, that note then requires us to disclose this. There is an amount of 466 million that we had disclosed as irregular expenditure that was confirmed for 24-25 financial year. Within that 466, this contract constituted 48 million. These were all the payments that were made from August, if I am correct, since the inception of this contract. So all of them, as per the recommendation of the determination test to say this contract was awarded irregularly, therefore any expenditure that would have been incurred since the inception of this contract is then deemed irregular. So those figures amounted to about 48 million. There are a few invoices that remains on the system. I then instructed my team to stop those particular payments so that then we do not perpetuate the incurrence of irregular expenditure. So within the 466 million that is disclosed on that note, it has other various contracts and various transactions, but the 48 million relates to this particular contract. The committee will note that I have tried to simplify it or summarize it on the presentation that I have attached. We have various contracts there. On
Just
the
give us the page number, the page number that you're looking at in the annexes.
Give me a few seconds.
I will assist you. I think it's page 389 of the annexes, annexure PPD 24.
Yes, Chair. It starts from 386 with a cover page there. So I tried to unpack the 650 that the Auditor General had flagged on our annual report. That 650 million consists of the 466 that was incurred in 2024, and there are other amounts of transactions that were investigated that had taken place prior to 24-25 that were then confirmed in the financial year 24-25. That is why the amount is 650 that was discussed with the portfolio committee from the AGSA. Then the next subsequent slides are then unpacking what is lying on this particular amount. You'll see that there's a number of contracts there. Majority of them would have been contracts that would have been awarded and they were deemed irregular. They would have been awarded by the BAC or at supply chain management headquarters, and then you do have other transactions that are on quotation basis that would have been incurred by the various cost centers in provinces. You will note that a procurement takes place from a police station to a district to a province to head office. So the auditors, when they audit everywhere. They will then select provinces and stations where they will go and audit these procurement processes, and from time to time they will highlight these particular non-compliances all over. But when you look at this, the bulk of this irregular expenditure that was disclosed in 24-25 is in relation to bids. This will be tenders that were awarded, and provinces do not deal with tenders. Tenders are only dealt with at head office supply chain management. So within all this, this one that talks to Medicare constituted 48 million. These were invoices that, or payments that were made prior to the cancellation of this contract, of which the cancellation took place in May.
Yes. I just wanted to correct. I think I heard you say 28 million. I've got 48 million.
It's 48 million.
So out of the overall 460 that's disclosed in note 24, 48 million of it
relates to this contract.
Yes.
Yes.
And what I understood you to also be saying is that of the bulk of the irregular expenditure that sits in the SAPs relates a lot to issues of bids and tenders.
Yes.
And those are issues that come mainly out of head office in relation to the supply chain management department.
That is correct.
And we are, could you then discuss what steps now have been taken? Because we know an internal audit has been done and was completed in April. And in your evidence, you now explain that what you've also had to do was declare the irregular expenditure, and that was done with the financials of the last financial year. Can you take us through what further steps have now been done in relation to contract to be able to get to some accountability?
Okay. So we then disclose this as irregular prior to the submission of the financial statement, and I get further briefings from the internal audit team. And we were of the view that, when it comes to irregular expenditure in subs, there seems to be lack of accountability, and the consequence management is not real. You have irregular expenditure taking place all over. Managers appointing people to do disciplinary investigations, and the disciplinary investigations, when they come out, the outcome is that a person must receive a written warning, a person must receive corrective counseling. So these, according to me, are not real consequence management, because they do not deter this behavior. That is according to me. You have people who are doing procurement and breaking the rules of procurement. The question is this deliberate? Are people breaking procurement rules deliberately to commit fraud? So this is a problem. This is a culture in subs where irregular expenditure, you will find that there's no seriousness and accountability on it. So having an experience of some of these transactions where investigations were done and the outcome had said nothing must happen to a person, or a person must get a written warning, and so on and so on, we as myself as the CFO and other structures such as the audit committee, the internal auditors, the risk management, this is a concern, because if we do not deal with irregular expenditure decisively and ensure that there is real consequence management, we will never be able to resolve this. People will continue. We do not know whether they deliberately break these procurement rules with the intention of committing fraud. Then myself and the Chief Risk Officer, we approached the National Commissioner. We said, National Commissioner, this particular contract has caused a lot of harm